The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Everybody arrives sort of at the same place that begins with, I have no idea how this fits. I have no idea what this does to the narrative, but it certainly at least changes it somewhat, or it fortifies or shores up sort of some of the original or early questions. Is that fair, Jack?
Yeah, and it's an air of mystery, too, because part of the subud, when you see these cities that are associated with it, Loretta Fuddy is somehow the head of the Seattle branch.
Yeah, the Seattle branch, yeah.
And then we see Chicago as part of the connection. And these are all cities that are, critical to Obama's narrative, especially the Seattle part. We know about Chicago. We know he lived there, et cetera. But the Seattle part is still unspoken.
Yeah, and for those who have never followed that story, the documents exist that Stanley Ann Dunham takes a little baby who's probably less than 10 days of age and leaves the Rock, goes back to where she spent her high school or spent her middle school in Seattle and enrolled in the university. The documents are there. The babysitters have been met. The rent checks. I mean, everything. I mean, the places where she lived. But what's not, now we're led to believe, remember the governor of Hawaii? I went with him socially to these parties, and they were, oh my God, what a outright lie. And
Abercrombie, Neil Abercrombie, who was had been a congressman, then he was elected governor in 2012. When the birther issue, when Donald Trump first made a big issue of this and forced it into the news, and I guess that would have been 2011. Abercrombie came forth and said, "Listen, I was there at the birth."
Yeah,
that's a quote. I was there at the birth.
Yeah.
And then he starts backing off of that, saying, "Well, I wasn't exactly there at the birth, but I saw the mother and father, and because they brought little Barry, that's what we called him, to the various social events."
It's a lie.
Well, even David Marin, the most recent Obama biographer, and a halfway serious one, disproved all that. No one had even ever seen Ann and Barack Obama together.
No.
None of their friends ever had. He confirmed that she was gone within days, and she was into Seattle, and so there were no social events for her little Barack and to attend. And then Abercrombie started mending his story a little bit. Then he started saying, "Well, mostly I saw him, later with the grandfather," which is possible, but even that is probably just made up as well, exaggerated.
I agree.
And then there was the really interesting introduction to the story by a fellow named Mike Evans, who's a celebrity reporter out of Hollywood, who was a friend of Abercrombie's, and he claimed on the air, on 37 different stations, that Abercrombie told him that he promised as soon as he was elected governor he'd get to the bottom of the birther nonsense.
Yep.
That was what he used, nonsense.
Yep.
And that he was going to clarify it all, but that as soon as he got in the governor, he found out that there was no birth certificate. So Evans goes on the air and says this.
I remember we had the guy on the radio show.
Right.
Yeah, he said,
and then of course, the hammer comes down on his head, and then of course a day later he said, "Well, I never actually talked to Neil Evans."
Oh, then he backed it up. Yeah, but you got the cuts. I mean, there's cuts where him saying, "Yeah, I talked to Neil," and Neil said there isn't one.
Right.
And he thought he kind of thought like he was covering Madonna or something, and and it just blew up in his face.
Now, given all this mystery, you would think that someone in the major media would take it upon themselves to explore it.
Yep.
But they don't. They do the opposite. And what was embarrassing, I said, I would, from any kind of journalistic history perspective, is that the first 3 or 4 biographers, these are serious biographers, New York Times, Boston Globe, New Yorker, to get into the Seattle part of the Obama story, purposely obfuscated it because they wanted to sustain the illusion that Barack Sr. and that Ann Dunham had actually created a family life.
Yeah.
Because that was part of the sustaining mythology that came out of the 2004 and 2008 convention.
The improbable story.
Right. So they kind of mentioned Seattle, like she went there like for a weekend, or she went there later, or whatever.
No, she went to school.
None of them would face up to the fact, as Marinus finally did, that there was no. They never lived together.
Well, not only they never lived together. That might have been a one-night stand.
At best, it was a one-night stand.
And plenty of people believe that it was the other guy and, all this kind of stuff. But as a final question, and we're going to have you on later in the week if we can, Jack, what does this latest bit of data mean to the entire picture, to the story?
It means that the story is even deeper and crazier and more mysterious than we had anticipated.
I mean, it really is. It's almost like these modern. They're in the end of they're always called a swerve ending, where you think this guy's a good guy, but he turns out to be the bad guy.
Right.
And there's a swerve in the story, and I'm waiting for the swerve because the story gets more and more complex at the same time. It sort of simplifies itself at the same time that it really comes to, it's whatever the official story is, it's not true.
Right. Bruce Willis is really dead.
Yes. Gosh, that's right.
That's the word we're looking for. You're right. It's like reading a novel and then I keep waiting for, and the nice thing is we have new and different contributors chipping into
all the
story.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the
and I'm appreciative of that. I always appreciate people who had real new information.
And this was great. Yeah.
And that's what I thought the Subud stuff was fascinating in that regard.
It's like the end of Jaws when Richard Dreyfuss surfaces.
Yeah, right.
You think the shark ate him, but no. All right, Jack, I love you, man. Thank you, sir, for this. Jack Cashill, American Thinker. Thank you.
This is Peter Boyles, News Talk 710, KNUS.
We're going to go right to work on this because Dan Kaplis is standing over Casey's shoulder, and I want him to get full value of this before we transition. This is up on our website, 710knus.com. It was developed this weekend. I saw it for the first time. I saw it Sunday for the first time. Look at it, please, 710knus.com, Case, if you would.
In a heavily resourced and documented article at AmericanThinker.com titled Barack Hussein Soebarkah by Jason Kistner, we find some amazing discoveries regarding the identity problem of Barack Hussein Obama. Jason Kistner is an associate professor of criminology at California State University, Fresno. Following is an edited synopsis of that article with an absolutely surprising find by the P.P. Simmons staff at the end of this video. One of the unexplained mysteries in the all but missing documentation of the early life of Barack Obama is the appearance of the name Soebarkah as his last name on an official document filled out by his mother. We are in possession of Stanley Ann Dunham Sotoro's 1968 application to extend her 1965 passport for an additional 2 years. Her passport, by the way, is now reportedly destroyed. On the second page of the application, Ann Dunham attempted to exclude her son Barack Obama, or Soebarkah, from her passport, but the item has been crossed out, perhaps on the advice of the consulate in Jakarta, as this would have left 7-year-old little Barry passportless, so the exclusion did not happen. The appendage Soebarkah seems to indicate a name change or a change in citizenship status for the boy. But there is a very good and surprisingly simple explanation for the seemingly random appearance of the name Soebarkah on Obama's mother's passport application. Believe it or not, the reason appears to be linked to Loretta Fuddy. That's right. The same Loretta Fuddy, the Hawaii State Health Director who approved the release of Obama's long-form birth certificate and who recently and mysteriously died in a plane crash off the coast of Molokai. Obama's mother and Loretta Fuddy have one very strange factor in common. Both have been directly linked to the Subud cult, which originated in, of all places, Indonesia, and was founded by the Javanese Muslim Muhammad Sabu. The small cult appears to have around 20,000 members worldwide. Fuddy's cult member name was Diliana. Her official position was regional helper. Note also that the World Subud organization seems to have been based in, of all cities, Chicago. Wow, think about it. Indonesia, Chicago, Hawaii, 3 locales linked directly and very importantly to Obama's life. We also know from a Hawaii Advertiser article that Subud was introduced to Hawaii in the 1960s. Obama's mother was directly linked to Subud by her biographer and New York Times reporter Janie Scott in the book a Singular Woman, The Untold Story of Barack Obama's Mother. This book was reviewed by the New York Times, so this is a heavily documented fact. Loretta Fuddy worked her way up the ranks and became chairwoman of Sabood USA, based in Seattle, from 2006 to 2008. But note that of all the persons that could have been installed as director of the State Department of Health in Hawaii, Hawaii chose Fuddy, a leader of a small cult with roots in Indonesia and connections to Barack Obama's mother. Secondly, remember that Fuddy assumed the directorship position in Hawaii in January 2011 after being appointed by Hawaii's governor just a few months before the release of Obama's long-form birth certificate. Changing one's name for spiritual reasons was something frequently done by followers of the cult Sabood, and Stanley Ann Soetoro was in fact closely associated with Sabood. We know that. It is reasonable then to suppose that Soebarkah, the name chosen for Obama on that passport, arose in the same way new names for others, like Deliana Loretta Fuddy did. But remember that the name Soebarkah appears in the passport renewal section labeled amend to include or exclude children. The name Barack Hussein Obama Soebarkah is crossed out. This signifies that Obama's mother had apparently decided to exclude Barack from her passport renewal. Apparently, Stanley Ann Dunham Soetoro changed her mind about the exclusion. Perhaps this was done after having been informed by the consulate there that doing so would leave Barack without a passport. But there is another possibility, one just as valid and even simpler. What if Obama's mother was trying to include Obama in the renewal, but she wasn't able to produce a birth certificate, and the Sabood name Soebarkah simply did not suffice legally? That could explain why the name Soebarkah appears nowhere else in any of Obama's documentation of which we are currently aware. But now for the real shocker in this entire matter. The staff at P.P. Simmons did some research and found an old picture of the founder of the cult of Sabood.
Bizarre.
One Mohammed Sabu Sumohadi Wijojo. Do you see anything odd here?
Amazing. Amazing.
Think about it.
Oh.
Fuddy, Obama's mother Dunham, Sabood, Hawaii,
Yep.
Chicago,
Yep.
Indonesia,
And?
no birth certificate,
Right.
Soebarkah on the passport,
So bizarre.
a dead Hawaii Department of Health director,
Oh.
the one who conveniently certified Obama's forged and fabricated long-form birth certificate.
It's like a Bruce Willis movie.
Are all of these simply odd coincidences?
A coinkydate?
Or is there something more here?
I'm telling you.
I have a feeling we will soon know the truth.
All right, Danny's rushing in the door. I tell you what, that's see it, 710knus.com. Danny?
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.